look at our final problem for the day, where we're going to investigate how we can write mixed numbers as decimals, thinking along the way, how is this similar to recording tenths or hundredths? Let's begin. Alicia won her 400-meter freestyle race by 4 and 25/100th seconds. How can you write this mixed number as a decimal? So just like before, let's start out by creating a model to help us visualize this number. So we see that she won the race by 4 full seconds and 25/100ths of a second. So in order to represent this number, I know that I need four whole numbers, right? So here's 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I need to stop and think about how I'm going to fill in my last model here. And I know that I'm representing the fraction 25/100ths. I know that this entire grid has 100 squares, and that's my denominator. So I need to shade in 25 squares. I know that one column is 10 squares, so I'm going to go ahead and shade 2 columns in completely to get to 20, and then I just need to shade in 5 more to get to 25. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, now I've visualized what this number looks like, and I know that when I write it in fraction form, I have my whole number 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then my fraction 25/100ths. When I read this, I would read it as 4 and that and is representing my decimal point. So 4 and 25/100ths. Now, let's take that information and let's move to our place value chart and think about how we can use this place value chart to write our number in decimal form. Let's start by thinking of our ones place. How many ones do we see in our model as we look up above? And we see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So we have 4 ones, and then after that decimal point, we have 25/100ths. So now we need to think about how we're going to write that in our place value chart. I know that I can write 2 full tenths because if I look at my model here, I have 2 entire tenths that are shaded. Then I still have 5/100ths that aren't accounted for yet. So if I fill those in my place value position for the hundredths, I'd write a 5. And then my final number comes out to 4 and 25/100ths. I would write it just like that. In order to read it, again, I would read it the same way that I read it when I'm reading my when I'm reading my mixed number form, which is 4 and 25/100ths. Let's use this number line to find where we would plot this number and to identify it, how we could write it in decimal form. So we know that we have 4 and 25/100ths. So as I look at my number line here, I'm seeing I start at the whole number 4 and I end at the whole number 5. And along the way, we're increasing by 1/100th along the way. And every 10/100ths are marked for me in fraction form. So I'm going to identify where I would write my mixed number 4 and 25/100ths. I know that 25 is in between 20 and 30, so it's in between 20/100ths and 30/100ths. So I'm going to find where that would be. So I have 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So I'm going to go ahead and make my mark here. And I know that this point marks 4 and 25/100ths as a mixed number. Now I'm going to identify how I can write that mixed number as a decimal. So I see here I have 4 and nothing, right? Just the whole number 4. And then as I move on, I now have 10/100ths. Here I have 4 and 20/100ths. Here 4 and 30/100ths. And that continues on. I'm seeing all the way until I get to my next whole number. So I have 4 and 60 hundredths, 4 and 70 hundredths, and I'm seeing that my decimal and my fraction are correlating all the way down my number line. Now I'm going to go back to in between 4 and 20 hundredths and 4 and 30 hundredths to identify how I would write this number as a mixed number. And here, for that mixed number, sorry, I want to write it as a decimal. So I still have 4. I still have 2 tenths, but I don't have 0 hundredths now. I have instead 5 hundredths. So I would write this mixed number as a decimal as 4 and 25 hundredths. Again, there are several different ways that we can use to help us find how to write a mixed number or a fraction as a decimal, always starting with this visual model to help us understand what this number looks like, moving to our place value chart to think about our decimal, and then we can always use our number line as well.